Welcome to 69 Festival of Rock. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Really excited to be here.
Introduce yourself. Tell me what you do in the band.
So I'm Brandon. I play guitar. I wrote the vast majority of the songs. I started the band a few years ago, and then I've just had the luck to be able to bring together people to help fill out the other instruments. So I write the guitars, I write the arrangements. I don't write the lead guitar. I find lead guitars for that, but then I write the lyrics.
So what were the beginnings of Serpent Rider?
So I was just, a few years ago I was listening to a lot of Dr. Dolittle, a lot of Trodel, a lot of old Scorpions, and I was kind of reflecting that there's like a certain type of epic doom that sort of lived and died very briefly, like obscure Bulgarian stuff, or like the most epic Chastain songs, the most epic Scorpion songs that were rooted in like slow epic hair metal almost, instead of like bands ripping off Manowar. And I went, I want to do that. Why not? So I sat down with a buddy and we started writing, and then that fell apart. And then a couple years later, I started the band with a different name, but I kept the same riffs. I figured it was time to make it happen again. And started Serpent Rider up.
What could you be classified as?
Heavy metal.
As a band, when you... There we go, they're done. What were your goals to accomplish when you formed this band?
Write music that I really like, play cool shows, play with bands that I like, and just same things as whenever I play in a band, just be proud of what I'm doing and write music that I can really stand behind.
Mm-hmm. At this point, you only have your music available on 2 split records, right?
Yeah, we have the split that we did with Ezra Brooks, and then we had a demo that we did with a different singer a few years ago that then Gates of Hell re-released as that like split compilation with some other great demos and a couple 7-inches that they put on the CD.
Yeah, we have one of those splits here. Care to show it and maybe tell us a few things about it?
Sure. So this is a split that we did with our good buddy Sean. His solo band is Ezra Brooks. And so Sean has been a friend for a few years, and he sort of reached out and was like, would you guys like to do a split with Ezra Brooks? And of course, is a big fan of Sean's music in general. Smolder's just amazing. He was in Manacle for a while, which I'm a really big fan of, even though he didn't end up playing on anything with them. And so I really liked the earliest Ezra Brooks stuff. That was how I got into his music. And so I was thrilled to do it. And so we went, well, why don't we sort of split it up, because his first split was called Visions of Power. So why don't we do a Visions of something? So it's Visions of Esoteric Splendor. We decided we'd do 3 songs each and a cover. And so then we did it, and we were lucky enough that No Remorse Records, which was pretty much our top choice for a record label, ended up deciding to sign both bands just based on the split.
Will there be an exclusive Serpent Rider album eventually?
Yes, we're working now. We're hoping to record in the next few months an album that'll be out sometime, probably next year, on No Remorse Records.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell me about the songs that will be on it?
A lot of it's just sort of a continuation of what's on the split, in that it's just sort of very obtuse, like weird, obscure heavy metal. I take my influences from, as much as possible, from like the less obvious bands, because I think it's, as much as I like bands that are not very necessarily original, a lot of my favorite newer bands are not very original. I just get bored writing that. And so what I like to do is I like to take influences that maybe aren't as common and sort of filter those in together. And I also started playing guitar on extreme metal. So I can't get that out of my songwriting, so I don't try to. Because if I tried to write something that just sounded like Iron Maiden, I didn't grow up listening to the Beatles and UFO. I can't write Iron Maiden songs. So I'm not afraid to include a lot of like Verathrone, Celtic Frost, Rotting Christ when I write. So it's going to be like a big just mixture of my influences. There's going to be fast songs, slow songs, songs that have both parts. I like to have a lot of variety, because Dio didn't have just fast songs or just slow songs on Holy Diver. He had both. I figure that's something that's sort of lost with a lot of newer bands, is that old bands used to have variety. And in a genre as retrospective as heavy metal is, I feel like it would be wrong to just write a bunch of songs that were similar tempos when I could be doing something more interesting.
Considering your influences, what are your songs about?
Fantasy, mythology, history. I read a lot of fantasy, and I've always been fascinated with mythology. We have a good buddy of ours, Jeremy Swiss, who's here at this festival this weekend, who's a classics professor that helped me do the research for one of the songs about Greek mythology from The Split. And he's going to be guest writing the lyrics to one of the songs for the album. And that's the sort of stuff that we love to write about. Moorcock, Tolkien, Herbert, just mythology, history, anything that's sufficiently cool and epic, and that sort of fits in the general narrative structure and aesthetic of the band.
What is the Serpent Rider image like when you play?
Heavy metal. I mean, that's what we're all about. That's what we're into. When I don't really have like a stage image in my head that's separated from whatever, denim, black shirts that everyone else has been doing for the last 50 years. And so that's our stage show, is just we play guitar, our singer sings, we don't have anything overdubbed, we don't have any backing track, and then we just sort of play and we have fun on stage. And it's a boring answer, but that's
what it is.
That's what it is we go up there and we play.
How did you go from being based in LA to Seattle?
My wife got a job in Seattle, so we moved. We had a very good buddy of mine that was filling out multiple instrumental roles, and a different buddy that was drumming, and the guy that was on drums backed out to focus on school before we even moved. And then my other buddy is very busy with his own band, so when we moved, it was an easy decision, instead of trying to continue remotely, to just find a new lineup in Seattle. And so me and Riza, when we both moved up, and I kept her obviously on vocals, because why wouldn't I? And then I was already playing in a couple different bands with our lead guitarist, and so then we just had to find a drummer and a bassist, and so we decided to just do a full new lineup in Seattle.
Which scene offers more opportunities?
There's advantages of both. Seattle, I think, has a stronger local underground in terms of having more and better bands, and I'm sorry to my Los Angeles friends to say that, but Los Angeles has not only a very rich network of excellent promoters, which is, I think, unparalleled anywhere else in the country, but we also have since I don't live there anymore, Los Angeles has a very rich history of heavy metal, and so much of the classic Metal Blade lineup came from Los Angeles, and so many of those bands still play shows, and so the opportunities to play with these classic bands is much reduced in Seattle. We played our first show with The Accused, which is amazing, but other than The Accused and Coven 669, there's just not a lot of that kind of old classic band, whereas Los Angeles, there's Hyrax, there's Trauma, there's Bloodlust. I mean, there's Tyrant, there's dozens of old bands that you can play shows with. And then on top of that, Los Angeles is a much bigger hub for touring bands. And so we've been playing mostly local shows either with entirely local bills or with smaller touring acts coming through in Seattle, because there's less going on. But Los Angeles has just a tremendous amount of touring activity, so it's just there's really advantage and disadvantages to both, and I don't think that anyone should take either city for granted, because they both have a lot to offer that a lot of cities just don't.
What does it take to keep a band like this going?
It takes genuine dedication and devotion, because there is no fucking money in heavy metal. There is no great fan base in this country, especially. It's not like Europe, where if you're a decent band on No Remorse or Cruz del Sur, you're going to be able to play constant festivals as long as you're any good and you show up on time and you don't piss anyone off. There's only a very small, tight-knit scene out here with festivals like Legions of Metal, which we're very happy to be a part of. But it's, if you're not truly dedicated to it, there's no momentum to keep it going. You have to keep it all going on your own. You have to make your connections on your own. You have to come out and you have to lose money to play stuff if you want to play things, especially as your band starts to rise up through, whatever limited amount of popularity there is in this country. And so anyone that wants to be in a band that is able to play cool things and have bands, just the number one thing is genuinely loving heavy metal and caring, not getting into some popular new band and going, I'm going to start a band, and then inevitably having it fall apart because you don't really love it. You have to really be a part of this scene and to really love it and to really care and want to do it for its own sake if you want your band to go anywhere.
Finally, what's next for you?
We're going to record this album, and then we're going to sort of see where it goes from there. We have a couple of promising opportunities for festivals next year that we may or may not take, depending on what our schedules look like. We're looking at doing a little bit of touring next year that I don't want to spoil. It's going to be really cool if it happens with a classic band that we're really good friends with. And other than that, just keep going, writing music, playing shows, playing festivals, getting out there, having fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.